Hi there. I'm Jody Cyber, your bookkeeping coach, here to kind of give you some more information if you've been debating moving away from QuickBooks Online, and maybe you've done some webinars or videos of watching Xero, but yet you're just not sure. So this video is for you. I've been a QuickBooks Pro advisor for since 2010 and a Xero partner since 2010. So this video is about me providing some translation of the way you did something in QuickBooks and how it might look in Xero. So first of all, and I've been dying to say this on video for years, it's when you change accounting systems, it is simply not reasonable to expect any other accounting software to have the exact same layout, the exact same features, everything identical to QuickBooks. You would not expect ClickUp and Monday and Notion to all have the exact same interface and menus. Don't do that to accounting. Xero is full service accounting software, GAAP accounting, accrual accounting, cash basis accounting. It does all the same things, maybe slightly different. Maybe it has some things that QuickBooks doesn't do so great. And these days, honestly, there's a lot of that. So when you log into Xero, this is your dashboard. Now, full disclosure, as of this date, this is what it looks like. The Xero has announced there's a revamp of the dashboard coming. I've seen a demo of it. Honestly, I like these small boxes better. It's going to be too much scrolling in the new one, but you're still going to be able to edit it. So you just grab this and say you want that up here. I like to have my more important accounts up here towards the top. The account watch list, if you're watching certain accounts, you want to make sure you're watching certain expense accounts and whatnot. If you're using bill pay, you can move that up here. Expense claims, honestly, I don't recommend that. If you're using something like Ramp or Row, you don't need that feature in Xero. So once you reorganize it, I think I lost the bottom of my screen. I can't click save. There's supposed to be a save button and it's not letting me save. So I'm just going to go back. So the other part of your screen is these are your bank feeds. So in QuickBooks, you had to navigate to find them. Here, they're right on your dashboard. So you can instantly see, oh, you have 23 items. I call this your homework. You can see the balance in Xero versus your statement balance. And the statement balance is coming from your bank. The difference is going to be these 23 items and or any other transactions lingering out there that haven't been reconciled. So if we come in here to the bank feed, get some real estate here. So I like to come back, compact view, get one on your screen. This left side is from the bank. The right side is recording the transaction, or as I say, telling Xero what to do with stuff on the left. It it does the same matching. So it found this, okay, spent, received. Money in, money out is kind of how Xero talks about it. So these are matching. You just click OK. You see bank rules, which actually work pretty awesome in Xero. It matches. Or if you decide, oh, wait, this was something different, don't apply the rule, you just click OK. To create a rule is actually it's very simple. I usually say starts with or contains, because if the banks change their descriptions coming in, things are suddenly just not going to work. Whoops. Okay, somehow Amazon's not there. I'm in the demo company, so full disclosure, you never quite know what you're going to find in any demo company. So you can allocate these transactions. Say you want to do by amounts, or you can even do um, percentages with a remainder. But if we just say, I don't think this has an office supplies, but we'll say office expenses. This project customer, these are, probably should have showed you this first. QuickBooks has class codes. Xero has tracking categories, and there's 2 levels. So I actually changed what was there for in the original, and I was messing around with this earlier. The way this demo company was using it was this was location. And then functional reporting, this actually I was setting up for a nonprofit demo. We could just say, oh, this was a fundraising expense type of thing, which means this is how each and every time this will be um, recorded, which if you're a nonprofit, the bankrolls might be problematic because y'all got complicated stuff going on here. The key down here, and I learned this a hard way when I had a client open a new credit card account and transfer a bunch of his recurring expenses to the new account. And I had to edit, I don't know, something like 50 bankrolls. So now I set my bankrolls to apply to all accounts so that when there's a credit card compromised or get a new card for some reason, you're transferring some of your ongoing expenses, that the bankroll is still going to go with it. Saves a lot of time, let me tell you. So the way you know your rule worked is this. If you come in here and you're like, wait a minute, I just created a rule, doesn't work. You want to come up here under manage account and go into bank rules. Chances are, if your bankroll doesn't work, in that first section, you chose equals for this name or something else that's not matching. If you didn't do contains or starts with, and say it could be that your bankroll works the first time but not the second, and it's because you left some of that gibberish in there when banks bring in. This is actually clean, but if you look at the bank transaction lines and it come in, sometimes there's some numbers and random coding in there, and you want to make sure you get that out of there. And you search with their contains, because otherwise your rule might work once and it won't work again. So this is a quick way of just, managing your bank feed. Cash coding is pretty cool. If you have at least, it's not on the growing plan, but if you have some catch up to do, I like coming in here and you can sort this. You can click off a bunch of these and say, I don't think they have a parking. I think it's going to be travel. It's going to be travel. And it just all filled down through. And you could fill in these if you wanted to. And then save and reconcile. One thing I forgot to say is you have to fill in a who and a what. And the who is your payee, and the what is your account from the chart of accounts or list of categories. In QuickBooks, this is optional, which is bad because when you convert from QuickBooks to Xero and you didn't put in all your names, it's going to come in as no name. It's not very helpful. So that's your bank feed. Bank statements, you can see what came in, and you can go from statements. You're still going to have the same challenges where bank feeds are not perfect. They skip, they repeat, they do things, and it's easy to find things in here. This is where the account transactions is where you can see things that aren't reconciled. And if they're older items, then they're your problems. You can sort by the status, you can do all kinds of searches. You can add transactions, which would be you have a spend money and a receive money. And you can add multiple lines. I forgot to tell you that on the other screen. to do that. If they say you spent money and you know there's a certain way it should be coded, you can record it in here before it comes hits the bank feed while it's fresh in your mind. Um, if you're in here and say this in QuickBooks, it's called split. Here you're just adding details so you can have multiple lines for something. Including, say, if it was a Stripe deposit, you can have your full amount minus your fees equals what the transaction was. The reconcile period, and this is the biggest thing accountants have been whining about, is the ability to actually reconcile. And I created this the other day, so I'll just continue. It's going to ask you for your opening statement and then your ending statement, and I just made up a number. So it's going to, I'm not going to check off everything that's reconciled. It's going to have something that, hey, you didn't match this type of thing. This is from 2017, so that's a problem. But it's going to identify, and then as soon as, just like in QuickBooks, when your difference is 0, you close the period. And a really cool thing about this, if you've ever been in QuickBooks and you realize that there's a mistake in an account from 3 months ago, and the only way to fix it is to unreconcile, which means you end up reconciling multiple months because QuickBooks automatically does that. In Xero, you can open one period, one reconciled period, make your correction, and reclose it as long as it still reconciles. And I'll also point out that when you close a period, it locks the transactions that no one's making any changes, which is a good thing. Because in QuickBooks, you've probably had a fair amount of times where someone changed a transaction after you reconciled, which is really annoying. So let's look quickly at sales. You have your invoices, you have your credit notes, you can still send statements. A really cool thing about Xero is you're not really going to need SASANT because for pretty much everything, Xero has templates to import and export type of thing. So that gets very useful, especially useful in doing, depending on how you end up converting, which I'll do a separate video on that because there's a lot to say about that. But here you can see, you can create an invoice and it can be waiting for approval if you have someone else that needs to look at it. Then you can easily see what's paid. But you see this repeating tab. So if you bill a client each and every month, you set up an invoice, how often it repeats, the next invoice date, what the due date is. I always set mine approved for sending. You can actually have multiple invoice formats and connect multiple payment, say Stripe, PayPal, Square, Go Cardless. There's a bunch. CPA charge, and a bunch of others. And you can apply those and say which ones go to which template. Say you don't want to incur a lot of fees on your larger bills and say they can only pay by Go Cardless or something. So then, and actually, let me add a new line because I thought this was kind of cool. When you see this insert placeholder, so I can say if I want this, I'm billing for last month or for, like, say October 1st, I'm billing for September bookkeeping. So on October 1st, when this happens, I want it to be month minus 1, which is going to say September, and I would just say accounting and put in my dollar amount. So those placeholders are actually pretty cool to further customize your invoice. And of course, you can see history, like your history is your audit trail. So you can see who created it. You can add a note saying, whoever, add attachments, add notes, say they tell you when they're going to pay it. You can preview placeholders. And when this is sent, there's actually an email sequence you can customize with reminders. Let me go back to invoices. Invoice. The invoice feature, I think, is more powerful than what QuickBooks has. Xero is really pushing their online payments lately. They don't usually have this all over the place. Attach your files. You can add any number of your branding themes, quantities, prices, files, customize your columns. Remember, Xero is based in New Zealand, so GST and VAT apply to everything. So they got this tax field literally everywhere. If you don't need to have a quantity, you just have your price. Maybe you don't need to show these on the screen, but you want them in the background type of thing. Projects, you'd have to look at those to see if they're going to do what you need. And then there is a I thought I'd be able to attach it here, but not so much. Let's go into account settings because this is a really cool feature with, oh goodness, no, I can't find it. Oh, here we go, invoice settings. They just this menu used to be only like 3, maybe 4, and Xero literally in the last week or so has redone these menus to separate it out and not have one menu being like the length of your screen, but I'm still looking all over the place for things I can't find. So invoice reminders is what I was looking for. You can set up these customizations and say when you want it, what you want it to say. There's tons of placeholders to customize it, which I highly recommend that you do. And say there's a small variant, you could say, don't send out reminders for stuff like that. I didn't used to want to have a PDF copy of the invoice included in the emails, but with systems like Ramp and being able to forward invoices for payment into bill pay software, I'm advocating it. Don't add the extra step of making them download your invoice because even I do that. You go to the bottom pile. Make it easy for them to forward the invoice into their bill pay system if they're an organization that doesn't just click your pay now link, and that varies greatly. So I mean, you can see how you can customize this, and it's I think it's kind of cool. Quotes, and I actually forgot to say the invoice templates and probably quotes are changing. Xero made that announcement. They didn't say when. I don't know if that's going to be fourth quarter or first quarter coming up. But you can create a quote. And the invoice and quote templates, they have let's go back under accounting settings. So basically, sales invoice settings, they have these default templates, which is your standard, and you just come in here and edit it. You're going to add you check the box whether you want your logo, check or uncheck all these fields that you want them to show, make sure your information is here, all of the things, rename things, even say, oh, I want this service or that service, decide which service applies to what, your terms of payments, and on the quotes. Now there's also, you see this is a DOCX, it's a Word template. You can get completely crazy with this as of now. And this is what I do with my quotes. I had my contract and everything in Xero for my quotes. Now Xero has announced this is changing too. to be more of a drag and drop, which honestly is long overdue, because these DOCXs are word tables and they're not for the faint of heart. Just saying. Let's look at purchases. You can enter bills. They have an integration or deep partnership or whatever you want to call it with bill.com. You can always use Ramp, I think Forwardly, some of the other bill pay options for this. If you're not using a bill pay option, I do encourage you to at least enter your bills to track what has to get paid and pay your people on time. So you can easily see what is waiting for your attention. It's the same thing, but I highly recommend Ramp if your company meets the qualifications to apply. The reports are extensive, just as much as QuickBooks, but there's actually let me move my head here over there. So you see this edit layout. You can come in. There we go. So you can add columns, you can group accounts. One difference is that QuickBooks lets you have, say, payroll expense account and then sub accounts like wages, taxes, benefits, whatever. Xero doesn't have that. It's all one line. So if, say, you wanted to group your utilities, you would basically just use control click and just, I'm selecting some, and you're going to group them and create. Of course, my phone would ring. You can group them and do a lot. There's a lot you can do with this, more so than in QuickBooks. But I'll leave that for you to explore. There are a ton of, this is my favorite layout for this report, is your income statement. Current and 3 prior. There's just all of these here to do with your reports. There are tons of reports. There's the 1099 function. Of course, there's sales tax. The 1099 report, you can, unlike QuickBooks, you can review your 1099s all the year long. You don't, like QuickBooks makes you wait until December for whatever reason. No one can still figure that out. But with and actually they finally separated it, because it used to be you had to go digging for this. But for your 1099s, you can review at any time. You're still going to go through the whole process of map your accounts, which is the rules. So in QuickBooks, you set up your account mapping for where your independent contractor or rent or legal fees and stuff were being charged. So you're going to set up, and of course they have guides for everything. Set up your rules, and then it'll automatically start telling you, and of course your NEC and your MISC. And then it's going to tell you, as soon as you come in here, review it anytime you want, who you're missing W-9s for and what that might look like. This does integrate with at least Track 1099. It's the only one I've been using. It was the first one that integrated with Xero. I want to say there's some others, but I haven't. Track 1099 has been fine, so I haven't looked at it. Sales tax is the same. They have an integration with Avalara for rates, if that applies to you. Contacts, when you import them, are a generic contact until there is a transaction for that contact, at which point they are grouped into the customer or supplier. There's a couple cool things on the contact record. If we just edit it, use some nice graphs there. You can have multiple contact names and indicate whether they should get any emails, i.e. invoices or quotes from you. I'm going to show you this other thing that's down here. This is what I like. So you can say it's a social, an EIN, and if you've done this in QuickBooks, I know I have, is oh, they're an S corp or a nonprofit, or they're one of these, which tells you why they're not getting a 1099. Whereas in QuickBooks, at least I did, I would put a note on the record to try to remind myself why I wasn't giving that person. But then you would check the box once you fill in this information, add them to the 1099 group. You can also set default accounts if you have special income accounts where you want this contact stuff to go. And if you have a special branding theme, say if you do business with larger organizations, they sometimes say, oh, you have to have this X information on your invoice when you send it, and then otherwise you're not going to get paid or it's going to get delayed. So you can create a special invoice template for them, just for them, with the information that needs to be there. You can set defaults for expenses, all of these defaults. So this is quite rather extensive. I kind of like the when you're looking at, the graphs, you want to see what activity you've had with a vendor or a customer. Of course, there's notes. Notes and history are typically going to be your audit trail, but let's see if I can find it. Xero added this funky report. Oh, they don't have that anymore. They used to have what they called the assurance. Let me see if that went somewhere else. Oh, here. Assurance dashboard. It's kind of like an audit trail type of thing. Who's been in, out, and did what sort of thing, or say when to see deleted type of thing. It's kind of another version of that. Projects, I'm not going to talk about. It's a feature sort of similar to what QuickBooks has, except Xero seemed to add that feature maybe 5 years ago and hasn't done anything with it since. And I don't really know anyone using it. Nonprofits might want to look at it for some of your grant tracking type of thing. So that might be useful. The plus sign up here, you can add this is sort of the quick add button. You can search anywhere. Of course, it's not a demo company. There is a very extensive Xero Central is their help area, and it's extensive. You can search for, of course, this came to my partner thing, but you can search for anything. They have all kinds of information directed strictly to a small business owner, non-accountant, and then they have education tracks for accountants and no end of help articles. The only thing I will caution you on would be making sure when you're reading an article or looking at any of their webinars that you are on the US, because they used to do a better job of this. Like this one says AU, but when I've done some searching lately for help articles, I've been accidentally finding myself in stuff that was for the UK and didn't even apply to us. Because remember, Xero is global, so it's not all about us in the US. So you have to keep in mind that, some of the terminology might look a little funky for that reason. The other thing, you can add files, and this doesn't show. Oh, here, do more with Xero. With every Xero account, you get HubDoc, which, let me see if I can show you super quick. If you're using QuickBooks, the receipts feature, you'll get this free account. You would actually click this link here, and that would connect you to your free account for HubDoc. It lets you email and upload receipts, code them, and then your accountant or bookkeeper can push them into Xero once they're appropriately coded and organized and whatnot. So if you were using QuickBooks receipts, this is your replacement. So I think there's probably a few other things. Oh, I know accountants are going to care about this. Um, Financial settings. So you can set cash flow accrual the way you do in QuickBooks and say when your tax period is and set everything, basically no tax. Lock dates work similar to the way we did in QuickBooks, but you notice you can say, I'm going to lock it for everyone except your advisor, who is your accountant level user, that they can keep working, but not let any other staff people make changes. And then the next point is you're going to change, you say no one's making changes. When you convert, there's a couple ways to do this. You can invite users. I'm not going to show you that because in the demo company, it totally doesn't even come up. You can, if you're putting your checks, set up your online bill payments. Xero is kind of like the QuickBooks has that business network thing. I don't use it. I don't, especially with QuickBooks, I don't like the risk. Um, Expense would be for expense reports. But like I said, I think that's a buy up. So I would probably tell you to use something like Ramp or Row for that. You can export your data. You can set up your Avalara stuff. Um, where are my conversion balances? Just what I was looking for. Manual journals or just journal entries. Find every code. If you're an accountant and currently using that, um, works the same way. You can actually save your searches, which is nice for when you're fixing the same stuff. Um, why am I not finding, where did they move this to? Oh, it's not there. There's another one called conversion balances where instead of using as an accountant, if you're starting someone fresh, you might do a journal entry. In Xero, there's actually a screen that for some reason seems to be MIA. Oh, here we go. Under accounting. They rearranged all this stuff. This is where you would just put all your opening balances. So instead of creating a journal entry with your trial balance, you would just come in here and then you can lock them. And the adjustments is usually going to be your retained earnings instead of opening balance equity, which is that account is an invention of QuickBooks and is nowhere, not even in accounting textbooks. I think that's kind of major. Yes, you can print checks, all the things, chart of accounts. Um, if you try to clean up your chart of accounts, okay, if it's a system account, it actually has a lock. No guessing what it is a um, system account. But if, like you see over here, there's a Xero, so you notice up here, you can either delete or archive. If there are no transactions ever against an account, you can delete it. Otherwise, it truly gets archived and doesn't show in any of the drop downs when you're recording transactions and helps clear the deck. You can easily view your chart of accounts by the different sections, which is helpful when you have a longer chart of accounts. And if you need to retrieve an account that you archived, you can just come back here and check it off and restore it, which is actually kind of cool. Of course, your bank accounts connect. They now use Plaid for this. Um, Still not perfect. Bank feeds will never be perfect. They're just not. Um, and I have even a client that's using a credit union in Colorado that now, I mean, it actually works now. Um, but the bank feeds you connect and set up, you can indicate whether the account is like a regular checking or savings or a credit card. No big deal. So that works. Let's come in here. They used to be able to say, set the bank type, but I guess since it's a demo account, like I said, demo accounts are always fun. to try to use. So you can import your own chart of accounts. You can import, you can export report card mappings. Accountants might care more about this. You can actually designate where for the report code, okay, this is a liability account, this is an expense account. And when you're trying to build some custom reports in Xero, you can bring in these groups easier. So you can dive into that with your, and the other thing, it's not showing here, Xero purchased Sift Analytics, SYFT, and on live accounts, they have early access already available. So you can see a lot more of your visuals of your financials. And oh, here we go, analytics. I'm not going to click on it because this demo company is not going to go anywhere. But if you're an accountant and already have a SIFT account, if you have, depending again on your subscription with Xero, you will be able to customize and create reports in SIFT. Although I have to say, what they're already integrating into Xero is creating some pretty powerful visuals for financials and editing and printing. The actual dashboards, when you make them live in SIFT, you can share with your clients as usual, set your basis, all of that. So this is going to far surpass QuickBooks for reporting, I think, when it's fully integrated. But they've only really started, Xero's only really started releasing the SIFT features within Xero itself. So we have a ways to go on that. So I think I've babbled long enough. I think I've showed you that yes, this is possible to make the transition. The other thing I'm going to show you is if you come in here, their app marketplace. You will see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones because there are companies that have never chosen to integrate with QuickBooks and only integrate with Xero and other accounting software. So you will find many familiar apps in here, some of which you're already probably using, and some new ones. So that doesn't have to be a deal breaker. And I did forget to say that there is no built-in payroll option with Xero, which I'm totally fine with. But they do have a deep integration with Gusto, whatever that means. And there's a few others, Paychecks, OnPay, there's a few others that integrate. But if you're a nonprofit, you know that's relative and the integrations never work the way you need them to. So explore the app market, explore the videos if you need some extra help, especially in the conversion. I'll do a separate video about conversion considerations because that's definitely a conversation depending on how you've been using QuickBooks. So I hope you found that useful. I am Jody Seibert, owner, founder of Fix Your Accounting, and hope to see you on the next video.